Good evening, everyone. We, the members of ShARE IIT present before you this session to help you crack guesstimate questions. As some of you might be knowing that guesstimate questions are asked in interviews of various companies and are an important part of recruitment. So let's begin with today's session. The speakers for the session are Shubh Agrawal, who is an SD intern in Rubrik, Shashikala Patel, who is management consultant in PwC, Anubhav Kalyani, who is a Quant intern in Quadeye Securities. Now I will hand over the session to the speakers.
Hello everyone, myself Shubh. Currently I'm an SD intern in Rubrik India. So let me start with this. Start sharing the slides itself. So I guess you can see the slides, right? So the session is about facing the guesstimates and the interviews. So basically, what are guesstimates and why should we be focused on the guesstimate and study them? So guesstimates are those set of questions which generally are based upon some sort of guesses or estimations you'll have to make. They don't have a precise correct answer. Like if you say 5 is the answer, it need not be the it need not be correct. Like it is entirely based upon the guesses that you made. So like structure getting and getting into it, by estimations and guesses getting into the answer. By guesses I don't mean ki, like you make a guess, I think answer would be 3. It's about an intelligent guess or why you think the reasoning should be there. You should have a reason behind that guess. So like it is generally motive to study guesstimates is that it generally asked in various interviews like quant researcher roles and trader roles in all the HFTs which come in the intern season, and all the consulting roles all as well as these questions. So the next slide,
Next is about how to approach guess estimates. So there's a certain criteria which you should follow in order to have a seamless and a smooth guess estimate session or like interview. So whenever an interviewer gives you a problem statement, so first of all you should write that problem statement and you should confirm with the case interviewer that this is the problem statement which you want to solve me or not, so that you both can be confirmed that you are on the same page. uh, Hello, Shubh, back. Okay, all right. Yeah. So write the problem statement first and foremost, and then talk about the approach. For example, if I'll give you that there's a problem, how many ambulances would be needed in India so that everyone can be reached within 10 minutes in an emergency? So now you should, first of all, whenever this problem statement is given to you, you should write it in a piece of paper, and then you should give a rough idea to your interviewer that how you are going to approach it. This will help you in two ways. First of all, it will give you yourself a clarity that how I'll approach. And second, if you tell this thing to your interviewer, he might like the problem, he might like your approach, he might not like your approach. So in the beginning only, if he does not like your approach, then he'll let you know that this is not the approach that I want you to proceed with. You can think of some other way. So this can help you save time, and also can you can have more good chances of having a good guess estimate problem with him for it, because now if you took a wrong approach, so I usually what it happens that people usually do not tell their approach, they keep on solving, and then in the middle of the way they realize that their approach is wrong, and then they have to go back to the top and then start it again. So that way the problem gets stretched a lot and it doesn't make a good impact on the interviewer, and it also wastes a lot of time. Second, break the problem statement. This thing I'll give you in the other slide example. This will be clear. And then last is the check the feasibility for the final answer. So it's a guess estimate. It is not expected from you that you'll have to reach a final exact number to the decimal places. But it's always nice if you check the feasibility. For example, I provided you an example that how many ambulances would be needed in India so that everyone can be reached within 10 minutes in an emergency. Now, if you solve the problem and you reach to an answer which is 500, now ambulances would be needed in India is equal to 500. So you can also see that you can also, by your common sense, you can just can analyze that this is such a lame number. Like India has a like 7 billion population and just 500 ambulances. So there might be some calculation mistakes, right? So you can always, once you come to a final answer, you can always check the feasibility and you can take a rough estimate that whether your answer is a sensible one or not. So this also I'll explain you in the further examples. Next slide. So yeah, so in consulting, you face very generic kind of problems and in guest estimates. Like, for example, this is one of the problem that how much water can be collected from rooftop in Delhi in a year. More questions could be like, for example, the ambulance one I have given to you. Other could be how heavy is a stack of a 1 trillion notes of rupees 10. So these are like very common sense questions you get in guess estimate. But again, it gets trickier if you mess up with the calculations or if you take wrong assumptions, right? So let's just see that how much water can be collected from rooftops in Delhi in a year. Now, internship and approach. And before approach, you can ask some clarifying questions to your interviewer, like in Delhi, see, this is very clear cut question, right? That how much water can be collected from rooftop in Delhi. But there can be some problem statements. For example, I told you ambulance one. So you can always ask clarifying questions that do you want me to look for ambulances which are like sent by only big hospitals or private hospitals, or do you want me to calculate the number of ambulances for both private and government hospitals? So these are some clarifying questions which you can ask to interviewer before proceeding on to solve actually the guess estimates. So in case you have some doubts, for example, this is the very clear, crystal clear question. But here also you can say that rooftops of which kind of houses or households do you want me to calculate their rooftops? Because usually you can assume that there are poor houses also in Delhi which do not have rooftops. So you can ask some clarifying questions to the interviewer before approaching. So next slide, please. So this is the part one. Now to estimate the volume of water collected, first estimate area of rooftops in Delhi and millimeter of rainfall in a year. So that in that case, you'll get volume is equal to area into height, right? So this is very crystal clear that first you'll assume the volume of water collected. For estimating the volume of water collected, you first need to estimate the area of rooftop in Delhi, and also the rainwater which it receives in a year. Next, and here you can ask the interviewer simultaneously that I'm approaching in this way. Is it all right? Is it okay for you? Will that work for you? Right. So that you both can be on same page. And here if interviewer says that no, this is not how I want you to approach, or this is something I want you to improvise in your this approach way, you can do it then and there. So at each step, first of all, keep your interviewer and yourself engaged in a conversation. Don't just bluntly solve the problem and give a final answer to him. The more you engage, the more good estimate session you have with your interviewer. And that is the most important part. Getting to a right answer is not a brownie point or not the aim, but having good questions and engaging your interviewer will definitely fetch you late the estimate to estimate the area of rooftop. First, you'll need to figure out the total area of Delhi into percent covered with rooftops into mm of rainfall, right? So this is the basic formula which you'll get to know, you'll get a hang of it once you keep on practicing the guess estimate. But this is how you should, for calculating volume is equal to area into height. First, you'll need to find out total area of Delhi, and then percent covered with rooftops, and then millimeter of rainfall. Next. So now you have, there first comes the step of assumption, which is total area of Delhi. Now here, you can either ask the interviewer that please give me a number so that I can go proceed on with the calculations, or you can use your own common sense that how much the total area of Delhi could be and give a certain sensible number. Now, if you from yourself, it is assumed that you will yourself provide a number. And if you yourself provide a number, just confirm with the interviewer that I am going with 30 kilometer into 30 kilometer. Is that okay for you, or does that works for you or not? And please don't take numbers which are like totally out of the boundary, like 2 kilometer into 2 kilometer, which is absolutely nonsense. So for this, have an assumption, have a common sense. Instead of asking interviewer, just say that I'm assuming this, and if you want me to change, I can change that. And then person covered with rooftop, that is 50%. Now here, I have taken a problem statement in which like it is mentioned that I am assuming that the 50% of the Delhi households or something is covered with rooftops. But here, if you want to make a problem more complex or something like that, then you can ask your interviewers now rooftop for like bigger houses, they'll have bigger rooftops. For middle class people have houses which have like relatively like covered with like they have small rooftops, and poor people do not usually have rooftops, those who living in slum areas. Here you can complicate the problem, but it is suggested that the more you can just take assumptions, they are like if this kind of like is assumptions is like expected from you, and you should not go this much into details. If interviewer asks, then you can go into that direction. Otherwise 50% your assumption is okay. Into millimeter of rainfall, this also you can take that average Delhi, how much it receives rainfall. If it's in Rajasthan, if it's in Delhi, if it's in Kerala, or if it's in Shillong, Northeast. So just have an assumption, like geographically, like Bangalore, you know that it receives more. It will be greater than 200 millimeter, but not for Delhi. So here also you have to apply like your common sense to get a basic decent number. Next slide. Again, then this will result into volume of water, which is area into height, that is 30 kilometer into 30 kilometer into 50% into 200 millimeter. Next. And that results into volume of water on the rooftop, which is 1.8 into 10 to the power 11 liter. Now here, now since you got a number, you can ask the interviewer that whether this number looks decent, or you want to rework or reiterate on the problem. And you can also guess and have an idea that whether this number lies in the upper boundary or like lower boundary kind of thing, or whether it is feasible or not. Here you cannot check like very necessarily like whether this number is very much decent or not. You'll get the feedback from the interviewer itself if it's not decent. But there are certain, like I told you for the ambulance example, that there you can just guess that whether your calculation is right or not, because you already have a rough estimate that this is somewhere the ambulance should lie. Like you do not get absolutely nonsense number. So here it's fine because the problem doesn't require cross checking. But be sure of your calculations. Like if you mess up with the assumption can be wrong for some time. The approach could be definitely not the perfect one, but one thing you should not mess up is with the calculations. If you that is the basic and least thing expected from the problem solving. If you do error in calculation, that will give you a big negative marking. And to save yourself from that calculation complication thing, take assume numbers in digits of zeros. Like here, percent covered with rooftop 50%. If you take 45, then it will definitely somewhere complicate your problem, and also it will take much little more time if you take 45 in solving and doing calculations. And interviewer expects, and what a guess estimate, good guess estimate problem solving session takes, is that you do not waste time on calculations and you do apt calculation. So take numbers which rounds up or which ends with zero. That is one suggestion while solving the guess estimate. Yep. Next slide, please. Okay, all right. So that sums. So consulting has only these kinds of problems, very basic. It always only few things you have to keep in your mind is like, first, you cannot mess up with the calculations. Second, your approach should be a good one. Third, your assumptions. For assumptions, you can have a basic knowledge, or there is like you can search on net also. You can search on net and easily find there is some guess estimate hacks which has common facts which will help in acing case interviews. So that will have demographic statistics, like for total population of world is 7 billion, and gender for male is 50 billion. like sorry 50%, female 50%. Then Asia has how much like population, that is 60% population belongs to Asia, African 15%, Europe 10%. So if you have some basic decent numbers in your mind, then you can easily use it in while solving your guess estimate, because there will be some problems which will require you to segregate the class into middle income, high income, lower income, unemployment in India, education level, life expectancy rate, what is the area of the world. Like here there's a question like how you had to calculate the rooftop. Now there will be guess estimate problems where you need data which is like area of the world. So that is around 500 million square kilometer. For area of Delhi, it's 1500 square kilometer. So these are some basic numbers. If you have in your mind, it will give you an edge, and it will you can solve the guess estimate questions more smoothly. It's not necessary, but definitely it will help you. Like income group, so number like percent of poor people, lower class people, middle class people, upper middle class people, higher income. So income group is something which usually we use in guess estimates while solving it. So it will help you. I'll just add this in the deck. It is like guess estimate hacks, facts and stats. I'll add that picture in the PDF itself, so it will be of help to you guys. So that is for consulting. Consulting doesn't require very like kind of mathematics and all that stuff. It just requires basic common sense and good calculation. That's it.
Hi everyone, I was Anubhav, and for like quant interviews, the questions are not like the ones which were told before. It's more like involving probability and strategy. And for some companies, it is like they tell you to give a bid, uh, like there are bid ask games, uh, and you need to uh, tell at what price are you going to bid, and you need to give proofs that why that price is good. So uh, so that proof that means your explanation of your bidding, that needs to be computed, like what is the expected profit that you will obtain from that bidding. uh, so that involves basic expectations, uh, your practice over the basic expectation problems that provides to be useful. uh, and other than that, there are like basic probability questions, which you will find on brainsteller, and 50 challenging problems in probability. uh, in my opinion, the same problems are asked which are there in 50 challenging puzzles in probability and brainsteller, or with some minor modifications in most of the companies. And for some top tier companies, like it is very different questions are asked, like uh, that requires quite a good amount of brain. Just for illustration, this problem is there, like you need to find which is bigger, e power pi or pi power e. So so you so the both the values, as you can see, are very close by. So you need to do something. In general, you will take log, but that is like uh, that is
From the
very common.
audience, does anyone wants to say, like, if someone gets this problem, how will they start proceeding with it? Okay, then Anubhav, continue.
Yeah, but I would say that uh, if you would if you would have known that e की power x is greater than 1 by x, or you had the expansion of e की power x in your mind, then you can see that uh, if you put x equal to pi by e plus 1, then from that expansion you can uh, find out. If you proceed, then it turns out that uh, hello. Yeah.
So basically, all know, like, e power x expansion is 1 plus x plus x squared something, and then so obviously for x greater than 0, and you can have this assumption that e power x is greater than 1 plus x. Now you obviously now what if you just put what if you just choose x equal to pi by e minus 1? In one or two lines, we'll get this result that e power pi is greater than pi power e. So it was like you can all see that this problem, though this is a very general problem, won't be as straightforward in the interviews. But this was a good example, like how like you see the approximation here. E power x is greater than 1 plus x. We left out all the terms, and you choose this. Yeah, Anubhav, continue.
Yeah, so I was telling just that if you need to crack the quant interviews, uh, then you should obviously do 50 challenging problems in probability and brainsteller. Like in brainsteller, you can see that there are four sections like strategy parts, discrete maths, like probability and the tricks one. So discrete maths is basically the permutation combination. Mostly it is that only. Uh, so and other than that, like the probability puzzles are like if you would have done the CS 203 course in computer science or MSO two MSO course in maths department, so they're exactly the same. Not I'm not sure about the maths course, but with respect to the computer science course, CS 203 is exactly the same. Uh, so I would recommend doing that. With respect to guess estimate, the problems are similar that you need to estimate, but it is nothing like guessing. So it is it is solving basically the problem. So
So
and
yeah, that's it. Like that's what like these are some of the resources, brainstellers, and 50 challenging problems. And for the consulting side, you have this IIT Bombay case work. We'll be sharing the slides, I guess, so you can all use have these links there. Uh, Now, Anubhav, if you have something more to say, else we can go for the questions part.
uh, yeah, other than that, I would also recommend that everyone does the probability and the probability part and discrete maths, of course. So so there is a section of strategy in Brainsteller. I was asked problems from there, but I wasn't able to solve because. So I would recommend the strategy part that you do not forget to solve the strategy part of Brainsteller in while preparing. Hi, hello.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's what. And for other than that, there are some specific problems in 50 challenging problems in probability uh, that you need to master. I mean to say that if you get on the first go, you won't be able to solve. That is for sure. So you need to do those specific problems multiple times. I mean to say that even if you solve once, you will forget after a week or so. So you need to solve 50 challenging problems in probability, some of those multiple times, and that will be useful for you. Yeah, and I was telling all this with respect to quant interviews and not with respect to consulting ones.
So
Yeah, thanks. Other than that, I would also stress that these days quant companies they also look at your coding abilities. So other than all this, you should also focus on your coding preparation because that is also taken seriously by the quant companies these days. That is, I believe the tests are half coding and half these probability puzzles and mental ability puzzles. So uh, all three are equally important. Like you can't miss out even on mental ability part. So that is also important. for the quant companies. Yeah, thanks. And okay, to be specific, like I would say about the Optiver part. Uh, so Optiver takes a 80 questions test in 8 minutes. So you need to do fast calculation, and after that uh, test, there is another test in which you need to do mental ability. Like you must have done in NTSC parts, and other than that, even companies like AlphaGrep, they also take uh, mental ability test, and other companies similarly. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, so if anyone has any questions, the floor is open. You can pitch in your questions and we can take up.
Okay, then if you don't have questions, maybe we can end the sessions. And if you have any questions, oh, there's one in the chat.
Yeah, Pulkit, I would like to say if you are preparing for quant, you should.
Like
Uh,
there are not much problems if you say like the quantity is very small. So if you would spend around 3, 4, 5 days, you'll be able to complete all of them itself.
yeah, I was saying specifically to Pulkit questions like uh, the probability part is absolutely necessary, and the strategy part is like strategy and tricks. Like if they ask, there is if you there is less probability that they ask, but they will. If they ask, then you need to be prepared. Like they are not so straightforward. They are specifics. Like I was asked a question on hats which was there, but I had forgotten by that time they had asked, because they are very specific kinds. You need to know them. And regarding Satyam's question, what CPI? Like for quant companies, it is like I remember for Quadeye it was 9 plus CPI. For uh, a few, मतलब कि, the year before a year it was like 8. Last year it was 9, and other companies it was even lesser, like 8, 8.5 plus only. 8, 8.5 plus. Maybe Shashikala can tell about the consulting companies.
Okay, so ask general, specific, and depth questions. Could you state some examples? Because I'm not clear. Are the questions asked general or specific and depth? What actually it means? Regarding problem statements or regarding resume or regarding what? Okay, got it. So, no, usually the problem statements are very generic, like I already stated, uh, number of ambulances or something like that. For case interviews, it can go in depth questions, but since this is not a case interviews session, so I won't go in that particular area. But for case interviews, yes, there are specific in depth questions. Not for guess estimates. Guess estimates questions, line if you want to know this case estimates problem statement length, questions length, so it can end up in like 2 lines, so it's very general. But for yes case interviews, there is the consulting asks two types of questions. One is guess estimates and another is case interviews. So for case interviews, yes, you might face sometime in-depth questions, but not for guess estimates, not really. Anytime.
Uh, I think one was asking on statistics. So, what kind of questions are based on statistics? They might ask about some distributions. Uh, I don't know, but they don't generally ask. Statistics is very less required, I believe.
Okay, so there is one, the most famous book, which is Case Interview Cracked by IIT Bombay. So you can find out pretty much good questions over there in chapter 3 or chapter 4, I guess. So if you practice that, if you do not read but practice that with your friends, you'll get a decent hang of guess estimate questions. So usually what people do is that they just read Case Interview Cracked questions book, and they do not solve it. So what my suggestion would be, if you want to really get a good hang of guess estimates or even case interviews, so just watch couple of videos and then practice. You'll get better just only by practicing. No reading, no watching uh, can give you improvement. It's just practicing which will make you good at it. Can you please elaborate on what is asked in case interviews? So this is not a case interview session, but since there are no follow-up questions after this, so maybe I'll take up that. So usually case interview questions are divided into three categories. One is profitability, next is a business case, and third is merger and acquisition. So in profitability case, you have a definite set of framework. So whenever an interviewer gives you a question, first you have to identify in which three categories this problem statement will fall in. If it's in a profitability, then you will approach with a profitability framework, which is evident. You'll find it on net. You'll find it in case interview cracked also. So you'll apply that framework. If it's a business case questions involve other type of questions, which is market case entry, growth strategy, go to market strategy problems. So if a new product is launched, so it could be some question around it, and then merger acquisition. So these are the three basic uh, problem types of case interview questions you get, and then you there is a certain framework associated with it, and there is certain number of like certain follow-up questions or clarifying questions which you need to ask. So there is some traditional method that you can follow, but after that it is all up to your common sense about how the case will like flow, and then how you will take it forward and reach to a conclusion. So you can, for example, if there is a profitability case, so you will apply the profitability framework. Now you'll start asking questions to the interviewers that what is the revenue, what is the number of sold of devices, what is the cost price, what is like the sales it did, what is the fixed variable cost, what is the uh, fixed cost, what is the variable cost. The way the case will flow will depend on an interviewers. Like if the interviewer says that no, I don't want you to look into the fixed cost, I want you to look into variable cost. So there your fixed cost just gets crossed, and now you have to only work on variable cost. So there your framework just stops, and now you have to apply your common sense and your basic common sense and your knack to solve, and that will come only as much as you solve the case interviews. So case interview guesstimate is like very small part of it. The huge and main part is case interviews. So it will require another 1 hour session if I have to explain it in or elaborate on it, but this is like overview of it. You can watch Victor Sheng's playlist. It's a 12 video. You can watch that on YouTube, and you'll get a great hang of how to solve and how to approach case interviews. Case interviews is much more wider and complex than guess estimate. Anytime.
So if there are no further questions, we would like to end the session here. Thank you all for joining, and I hope that this was an informative one for you, all of you.